Hey guys, welcome to Scar Stories. Today is week 3 of my latest series, Addicted. Join me as I interview registered nurse and retired Alanon director Nans Reynolds for an eye-opening view on alcohol and drug addiction. For example, did you know that for every person who struggles with alcoholism, it harms at least 7 other people connected to this person? Nan has dedicated her life to teaching the families and friends of addicted people how not to enable and change their perspective on this widespread problem in our culture. Her book, I Love You But Not Your Addiction, is available on Amazon and includes tools and training rarely offered in traditional counseling. I thought I understood addiction pretty well, but this interview taught me so much more. Drug and alcohol addiction have touched most of us in one way or another. It's worth understanding this difficult issue so we can help those around us who might need us. Check this out. Hey everybody, welcome to Scar Stories. We continue our topic this month on addiction, which is actually called Addicted. And we're about to dive into a really great topic right now because we've talked about a few things in this area of addiction. We've talked about addiction to technology and social media. We've talked about food addictions and eating disorders. And this next week, we're going to be interviewing Nans Reynolds, and she's about to join us here. We're going to be talking about drugs and alcohol, which is a huge issue. This is something that affects each of us deeply. And so I'm so excited and proud to bring you this podcast today because Nan is amazing. She has so much experience to share. And I just want to introduce everyone to her right now. This is Nans Reynolds, everybody. Say hello.
Hi. So happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're so blessed to have your wisdom, Nan, and what you're going to share today. So just to give a little background on Nan, you guys, before she starts, Nan has her master's degree in social work. She is a registered nurse, and she is also an author. And she's written this book, which we're going to talk to her about right now, too. That's called I Love You But Not Your Addiction. And it's going to be available in the show notes. So if you're interested, you can download that. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself? So how did you get involved with Alanon?
Well, I've often wondered how a nice girl like me got into a mess like this life has been, but you know what? It's been my biggest blessing. And when I think I'm very old now, and when I think back on childhood, there was nothing really that got my attention. It was just, back in those days, we just rode our bikes and went roller skating and went to the beach occasionally and played basketball. And there was nothing in my childhood that require me to have to think about anything. It was just pleasant. And I think when I look back, it's the things that didn't happen to me that have impacted me more than the things that did. My brother was 8 years older. My dad traveled. He was with a pharmaceutical company. And my mom she played solitaire a lot. And I knew I was loved and they loved me. And there's just nothing really that was outstanding. That, when awful things happen when you're a kid, they're awful and you're traumatized and you need to deal with them and work through them and understand them. But when nothing happens, you think, well, that was all great. But in a sense, I wish I'd had more experiences. I'd developed maybe better coping skills because it really came to me at 32 and I had to hustle with my lack of preparation for life right into a lot of situations. And the rest of my life was full of traumas and events and things that required me to have some skill and some wisdom, and none of which I had. So I've often called my childhood one of benign neglect, which was I was very loved and that was all there was to it. There was nothing that gave me preparation really for difficulty in life. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Went to the school of nursing. My family was very medical. And of course, hospitals are full of caretakers. Those of us that are the compassionate caretaking sort. And it would make sense that I was attracted to somebody who needed my care, namely an active alcoholic. So that was husband number 1, father of my kids, and 20-some year marriage. And in all that, I learned a lot because difficulties came along. And I was nursing at the hospital, and I worked at a psych ward. And I began to notice how many people there were there because they were child of an alcoholic or married to an addict or had that problem themselves, and how few of the medical profession really understood addiction. So that's kind of how I got into the field, as I followed my passion of what I knew about. And I think that is God's plan, that, you know, when your gift meets the world's need, you know, he kind of guides you toward it. Now, there wasn't a thing in the direction of my life that I agreed with. I fought all the way, you know.
Right.
When I look back, I see how well taken care of I was and given so much grace and opportunity to learn. So I loved the field of addiction. I felt fortunate and to know the people and had the great experience, and especially the family program. And one of the things I realized, I have a little gimmick. I have a lot of gimmicks, but one that I used was a vision of the University of Michigan Stadium, 75,000 people. And that's the number of people that had overdoses in 2019. And then next to that picture of that full stadium of 75,000 people are 7 other stadiums full of friends, family members, children, relatives, parents. And that is the stated statistic that for every addict, there are 7 people that are affected. And felt very fortunate that the director of that hospital allowed us to run such a rich and full family program, which really gained them no money. It's kind of a gratis thing.
Right.
But I loved it and learned a lot and made like friends. And I think I had on my wall for years a little plaque, and it said, if I don't do something, I'll just be an old lady with a good idea. So I retired at 70 and moved to Virginia Beach,
Right.
to be near kids, my oldest or my youngest, and decided, you know, I hated that all that great knowledge and experience and wisdom was not being utilized anymore. So I thought, why don't I write a book? Well, I did that over the next 5 years, procrastinator that I am, and decided to publish this book called I Love You, But Not Your Addiction. And it's the, you know, all the millions of wonderful books in this field of addiction. I had never seen one that just talked about the content of a family program. And of course, family program, in a book, you don't get the great advantage of meeting with patient family and all the good things that can happen. But I did put together a lot of different chapters. It's like walking into 20 different rooms and having 20 different topics.
Right.
And what I so know is still true is family members don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Frankly.
Right.
We're well-intentioned, we love people, and our hearts are broken, and we're desperate, and we're frightened, and we're mad, and we're a mess. That's what we are.
Right.
And all I can say about this little book, which isn't little, is that people have said when I read this, I felt differently about so many different things, and that was my goal. So at any rate, I did transfer out of the psych hospital and went to work in this substance abuse hospital, and it's been the richest life I could imagine. I've been so grateful.
It's amazing.
And that's how the book came about, was I just started writing about topics. And I'm not a marketeer, and it needs more editing, it needs formatting, it needs a lot of things, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it for family members. And the greatest, a lot of good comments, a lot of 5 stars, but a lot of people have said, which pleases me to pieces, that when I read it, I began to think differently about everything. And that was the goal.
Right.
To educate families. I mean, it isn't about drugs. You can look that up on the internet, and they change all the time anyway. And it's not a page-turning thriller story. It's not anybody's life story. It's simply the content of a family program. One of the things I know for sure, all the things that I've learned about caretaking and nourishment and being a mother, that's an affliction in itself, are not necessarily effective when you're up against addiction.
Right.
And there's a reverse logic to it. You know, that whole idea that doing less is really doing more. And you need to understand that it's not abandonment of the person. You need to understand about detachment, what that really means. It's not giving up. It's not going away. We need to understand about our own anger, which is useless, understandable, but useless, and harms us, by the way.
Sure.
And we need to understand all about enabling, what that's really about. It's really about what we need, which is okay. We have needs, but I love 3 words that we learn to be, 3 simple words, supportive, but not custodial in the relationship. That's quite a mouthful, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so much. I have about 4 months worth of things to talk about, Susan, but today I wanted to talk about two main things, just kind of fun ideas for families to begin to think about. The first I have in front of me. Can I talk about these right now? These are my QTips.
That's perfect.
See QTips?
Yep.
And we all have them. It's not for your earlobes. It's a little gimmick and I still do a group of families and friends. And right now I've got all parents of adult children in this group. But I give them all a QTip and I tell them it's about quit taking it personally, QTIP. It's a little gimmick. And I give them Q-tips and I say, put it in your wallet, put it in your car, put it by your phone, put it anywhere you can see and be reminded all the time that although what's happening in your relationship feels personal, it's really not about you. And that helps a little bit, because we always think, well, what did I do, or what could I do, or what should I have done, or what I should have not done. And really, addiction has a life of its own. And I always like the statement that the addict, the addicted person, and I like to say that rather than the addict, it's not doing anything to you. They're doing it in spite of you, which is a great wisdom to have, even though you say, oh, baloney, that's my car they ruined, it's my wallet they stole. That's true, and that's obviously very personal. But in a sense, you're just in the way of their addiction. You know what I'm saying? It's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your worth or their love for you or your love for them. It's just what addicts do. And I mean, if I were addicted to drugs, I'm sure I would lie to all of you and I would manipulate and I would do whatever I have to do because I have to get to that drug. And so we jump in thinking we can change their mind and influence them and get them to think differently and dress differently and do differently and be different. And that is our delusion. Right. Just like I thought, with my 5 years of nurse training, thought my husband had sinus trouble,
Right.
He had more like a half a day was what it was. So at any rate, there's so much to learn. So I offer you, go get Q-tips, put them wherever you will be reminded. Buy your phone's a good one. We get horrible phone calls and horrible things. And that's all in the book too. It's about projection and, the person feels bad. So they're going to toss you the hot potato and they're going to get you to feel bad. I tell you, when you're up against addiction, and that's what you're pitted against, it's not your person. It's in your person, but not your person. And it's no reflection of you in any way. And it is true that we do hurt each other. That of course we do, but so what? We all do that, and there's healing and forgiveness and therapy and reconciliation and all of that. But we did not create addiction in anybody. It's not possible. We're not God. We don't do that.
Right.
And creating bad feelings is just kind of normal. And then we have a lot of good ways to deal with that. But we always think it's, so many parents think it's their fault, particularly parents who had their own addiction, whether they got into recovery or not. They always feel so guilty.
Right.
And that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And I like to say to people that when you're up against addiction, you're up against three things, really: denial, delusion, and compulsion. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
And the person with the addiction is in complete denial about how they are.
Right.
Just like I, as a wife, was in denial about what the problem was. And they're into delusion about the shape they're in. They really, truly, it's the only disease in the world that makes you think you're fine and you're just half dead.
Right.
So denial, delusion, and of course the compulsion of the drug, which is calling the shots. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk now about Chucky. You all know Chucky, Child's Play. I have Chucky with me. And a young man once at the boys' rehab center in Michigan heard me talk about Chucky years ago. Chucky's lived in the trunk of my car for years. So at any rate,
I love it.
he was an artist and he drew a picture of Chucky driving the bus. I said, Chucky drives the bus of the addict. Chucky is addiction. And he's got his hands on the wheel, and he has his hands on our wheel too. And we're so busy trying to control the addict's bus while Chucky's driving our bus. I mean, can you see the mess it is? Can you see the crash that it's going to be? So we need to, with our own information, get our hands back on our wheel, get Chucky off of our bus, and hope that our addicted person can get to some help to get Chucky off their bus. But I want to talk about Chucky. He's sitting here next to me on the couch. It's time to wake up, Chucky.
That's awesome.
There
he is.
If you can see this, you can see him.
Right.
I was telling Susan, I was laughing. I hope he was in the trunk of my car. I hope I ever got stopped. And the officer would look in the trunk. They'd think, oh my gosh. At any rate, here's a Fruit Loop.
Oh, that's funny.
But Chucky is all chemicals. I don't care what chemical. You can go online and learn more than you ever want to know about chemicals, and what they do and so forth, and they're terrifying. But Chucky is addiction. And he is in denial about how the shape he's in. And he is in delusion about everything. And he's compulsively hooked. But he looks cute at the beginning. If you know the story of Chucky and all the movies about Chucky and blah, blah. I used to share this story with family members, and it helped them visualize their addicted person differently. Because you are pitted against Chucky, is what you're pitted against. It's not your person. It looks like your person, dresses like your person, but it's really Chucky operating inside that person. He's completely changed their thinking and their brain structure. And there's all kinds of literature on that. But he's pretty cute. People say, why don't they just quit? Can't they see what's wrong with them? And God knows we're happy to tell them everything that's wrong with them every day. And the interesting thing about addiction is the more you're into it, the deeper you're in the swamp of your brain being affected, the more you think you're okay. And it's important for us to realize that the person you're trying to convince to go get help because they're in trouble really thinks you're nuts, and they think, I'm really okay. I can control it. Well, number one, anyone that says, I don't control my broccoli intake to you, it's like, If you think you have to control something, it's an automatic, red flag.
Right.
At any rate, Chucky knocks on your door, and the soon-to-be addicted person answers the door, and Chucky says, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Do you want to play?" And if you look at all the heavy use, light use, social use, accepted use, promoted use today, a lot of us like to play with Chucky. And most people, it's just fine. You're a social drinker and you can control it, and been going on for thousands of years and will continue to. But Chucky looks like a good time, so you let him in and you play with him for actually could be once, it could be 20 years. Did you know that beer is still our biggest killer? It just takes longer.
Wow.
Than all these dramatic fentanyl and crystal meth and all these drugs that are so dreadful. At any rate, you play with Chucky and you say, "Okay, Chucky, this has been fun, but you have to go now. It's 5:00. And he says, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." So knock, knock, next day comes back in, same thing. And this could go on for I don't know how long, but then something different happens. Gives me goosebumps to think about it. And this is not a time or a day that Chucky, that your person can identify or that you even notice. But they say, "Well, you got to go. I got, 5:00, I got things to do." And Chucky says, "I don't think so." He says, "I want to stay another hour." And that is the first time that Chucky made the choice. And you're the addict, you don't really understand what's going on, but what's another hour? And then it's 7:00, and then it's 8:00, and then it's finally 24/7. And Chucky is in your house, and he's not cute anymore. He is what I call a terrorist. And I don't know if you can see how hideous he is. He's into your house, he's into your relationships. So they aren't relationships anymore, they're case management. And he begins slowly to take whatever he wants. And I could feel this wall behind me. I did a whole talk on the loss and grief and what we lose to Chucky. One of the most profound comments a man made once, I remember he had a girlfriend in treatment. She went north with another patient she'd met. I don't know what that was about, but he kept coming to the family support and he was so heartbroken. And I said, "Well, what is your biggest sadness?" And he said, "My biggest sadness is the loss of the possibilities." And that just struck me as I hadn't heard anyone really say that. There's a million losses. You lose your money, you lose your car, you lose your mind, you lose your sleep, you lose endless things. But that was so powerful, the possibility. Chucky takes the possibilities out of the picture. At any rate, he is driving their bus. And we, of course, see all this happening. And of course, we think we are delusional, that we can fix it. We jump in with all of our efforts and our good intentions and our love and our heart. And we try for years sometimes to get your person to think differently. You think you can get Chucky off of that person and out of that person. You cannot. That is strictly up to that person to have to want to get Chucky off their bus. And if they're fortunate and you're fortunate, they choose to go to AA or NA or go to treatment or long-term or whatever they need to do. And treatment centers, that's not any answer. That's a beginning. That is strictly a beginning.
Right.
And they help the person detox and get Chucky off the bus. But then recovery, and you can stop using, doesn't necessarily mean you're in recovery. It means you quit using. But nothing will change and get better until you quit using. Kind of a dichotomy there. So, at any rate, if you're lucky, Chucky Chucky's driving your bus as a family member, and if you're lucky, you stumble into a family program or hear about Alanon or Naranon, the family groups,
Right.
and you begin your own recovery and your own education. And that's very important. So, but then the day comes when you have to re-enter your life. This is for the addicted person and even for you. And they've got two choices. They either can go to the old neighborhood, the friends, the habits, the hangouts, or they can go to the new neighborhood, which is terrifying because it's foreign and you don't know anybody, you don't know anything, and those meetings are weird and you don't know what they're talking about. You sit in the back of the room and get out of the room as fast as you can. And family members are left to come to terms with what's happened. And yet they're expected to turn the corner without any help, any education, and do some resolution and some resolving things and then move on. Well, it's hard to turn that corner. It takes a lot of sandbags.
Right.
And families need help. They so desperately, one of the examples I love is the car accident. And I don't love it. It's a good example of a family in a car, and the driver is the addicted person. And there's a big crash, and everybody comes and helps the driver. The ambulance comes, the police come, the medical people come. But what about the backseat people? And what about the front right seat person? There's so little help there. Not only is there no help, but we open the door to the back seat, even though you've got a broken leg and a smashed face. Please come visit and bring clean clothes. Visiting hours are Sunday from 2 to 5. There's not much recognition still of the trauma and experience of family and friends, many of whom are not sedated using drugs, and they're feeling it all, and they have huge traumatic events to recover from. And we're stuck, family members get stuck in blaming and anger. We're still so angry, and we just don't know how to get better, or that you even need to. Because that other person deals with their issue doesn't mean you don't have to deal with your own.
Right.
My pneumonia doesn't get better because your broken arm got fixed. I guess that's a stupid analogy, but
that's a good analogy. Actually.
So, Chucky,
no, that was a good analogy.
It's, yeah, it is. We need to help. I'm so interested in the people in the back seat. There's not enough, but plenty of help for the person with the addiction. And if I had my way, we would have everybody addicted go to about a year of treatment and new ways of thinking. You have to think. And family members, I heard a great phrase. I have a lot of one-liners in my book. And, a one-liner can tell a big story. But this one man said, where did I read that I don't want to do anything at all to make you comfortable in the mess you've made for yourself. Isn't that good?
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything at all. A non-enabling statement to make you comfortable in the mess that you've made. And so when we talk about hitting bottom, it's about letting the pain in their life have a purpose. I had a guest speaker in group, and he does interventions, and he's also in recovery, and he's a dynamite young man. And he said, he told my group of parents, he said, let them have their pain. That may be the best motivation of all. But, if I were addicted, I'd find as many caretaking people as I could until I finally ran through the list.
Right.
It's a wicked disease. Wicked, wicked disease. It's evil. Chucky is evil.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I used Chucky and have for years, Chucky needs to go to the right neighborhood. The problem is, he gets sober and he's on his way to a meeting, and there's Chucky at a bus stop waving and saying things like, oh, just let me on the bus with you. I just want to go a little ways. Just a block. I won't harm you again, I promise. Well, he gets into the back of the bus, and pretty soon he's worked his way to the driver's thing again. That just want to go a block is really one joint, one drink, one anything that alters your ability to think and make choice. And one of the questions people, goodbye, Chucky, get out of my lap, I can't stand your angry. I'm so nuts. One of the
I love it.
good questions. What's the difference between somebody who's alcoholic or a heavy drinker? Actually, some heavy drinkers actually drink more than some alcoholics.
Wow, isn't that great?
So I say that again. Some heavy drinkers actually use more than an alcoholic. The difference is alcoholism is the ism part. It's you lose choice. That first time that Chucky said, I'm staying till 6, and you gave in, you were beginning to lose choice. And then it just encroaches and creeps up and consumes you. And of course, today we're dealing with such frightening things coming across the border, fentanyl. It's horrible.
Right.
And one of the things that makes me sad is that the addiction continues, and it's been so usurped by our concerns with COVID, rightfully so. But the addiction is continuing and worsening because people are, I don't know, why do people use? That's another question. I don't know, maybe to have a good time, maybe to avoid a pain, maybe to please somebody. There's a million reasons. And no, I don't think there's an addictive personality. I think, people get depressed. Is that an addictive personality? Not necessarily. I think the biggest factor is your genetic. It's a biopsychosocial disease. It's your family tree, and affected also by your environment and your mental state. But if you got a lot of addicts in your family tree, beware. You have the genetics to slip into. And the thing is, you'll slip into it without knowing it, and you'll defend it, and you won't see what's happening.
That's such great advice, Nan. And I'm so appreciative of you sharing all this today. There's so much great information, and I know our listeners will benefit. And I just want to thank you for spending this time with us today. And I know we're going to have you back on because there's so much more to talk about this.
You're my favorite sky. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Scar Stories. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. Help us spread the love. To make a one-time donation to Scar Stories, click on the donation link in the episode notes below. Or, for just a few dollars a month, you can join the Scar Stories community on Patreon. Your membership includes private Q&As with one of my awesome guests, plus a free digital soul guide inspired by our monthly series. Members also get the chance to share their Scar Stories live, on the air, during the final week of each series. Life can hit you hard, and it's easy to quit. Whatever your Scar Story, it matters. You got this.